I read it, and have actually started to read it again. And so, I mean, I've got some. I mean, I got a lot out of this. Surprisingly,
well,
I didn't think I would.
I'm so happy because it's so old, you know. So I'm going to start just so we'll get people that add on to the call. Welcome to our last book club call of the year. I hope everyone enjoyed it this year. I still hear from many people and see a lot of people at ICSC. I think the winner, we should probably do a Survey Monkey, but I think the winner still was Greg Voss's book, which was the first one of the year, which was Never Split the Difference. And, you know, and it was a book on negotiating. And I definitely, I don't know, Josie, if you're listening, but I know she's, I think, with her son today at Field Day. But I think we'll do a Survey Monkey to find out what everyone's favorite book was. So, but this is the last book of the year, and it's one of my favorites that I loved for many, many, many years. And as I started to reread it and listen to it, I thought, oh, people are going to hate me that I picked this because it's so old. You know, the book, the author's talking about the success of Sears and you know, all of this, like, you know, what's hot in the 90s. So I do apologize that it is so old, but there are books like Think and Grow Rich, you know, that are old, or the one about war. What's the one about war?
Art of War.
Yeah, Art of War, that are really, really, really old. So I was hoping, and Greg and I were talking before the call, I was hoping that you all would forgive me and keep listening, because I do believe that there are a lot of really powerful things in this book. And the reason, not only did I want to pick it because it's one of my all-time favorites, I wanted to pick it because, especially, which I kind of ignore a lot, not on purpose, but, you know, you tenant rep folks that are on the phone, you know, you sell a service. Right? I mean, us project leasing people, at least we have real estate to sell. But you tenant rep people, you're selling you, and you're selling a service. And that's what I love about this book, is it's teaching, you know, selling the invisible, which is selling the service versus the product. So Greg was just telling me, I said, I'm so sorry, the book it's kind of old. And he's like, no, I got a lot out of it. So, Greg, thank you so much, because you made me feel good at the start of the call.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it definitely resonates. And, I mean, it's actually interesting. They do talk about Sears, but they also talk about the downfall of Sears. So it's actually kind of very prophetic in that regard.
Yeah, the lack of focus, right? He talks about how they're adding, besides just clothing, right, how they added the linens or the furniture, and, you know, all these other products, and how they got away from their focus and what started the downfall. But yeah, exactly. So, and again, I am, people have been asking me, are you going to do it again next year? I definitely am, because I promised all of you, those of you that encouraged me to reboot the book club, which we had started back in the recession. And I gave it up after a year because I was basically talking to myself and no one was participating. And I promised if you guys would jump in and give comments every once in a while and then participate, even if you didn't read the book, but if we throw out a topic and it relates to what we do as leasing folks or people in investment sales and commercial real estate, then, you know, I would love to do it. So I very much enjoyed it, and I thank you all for the 12 months that I think we canceled once because I hated the book. I couldn't get through it. But I loved how you guys have participated and, you know, given your thoughts and given your comments, because I think it's important to not just hear my voice. And I think it's been fun this year also that we've been able to have authors on the call, and going into next year, for sure, that will be the continued focus. Every time I can get an author to speak, I will. We have this special announcement in February. We have a new book that actually just came out this week. I don't know if you all had heard of it or not, and the author will be on the call, Giggle Giggle. So now this is my book. We just got it. So we'll be shipping it out for those of you that purchased a copy. Thank you so much. And the author, me, will be speaking about my book in February. So we originally had it in January, and Josie said, well, you got to give them time to read it. It's not that big of a book, so it's going to take you guys like an hour to get through. But thank you all for the support, and it was on my bucket list for 14 years to write it, and I'm very excited. So, but let's jump into Selling the Invisible by Harry Beckwith. And again, if you started reading it and you thought, gosh, this is like from 30 years ago, 20 years ago, I encourage you to keep reading and finish it, because I do think, like Greg said earlier, there's some nuggets in there. So they talk about how service is number one, and it's very interesting how when you're reading this book, social media didn't exist. And the entire time they're talking about service and familiarity and getting your name out there and what your brand is, and the entire thing, as you're reading it in 2018, you're like, wow, this social media was the answer to a lot of this for a lot of companies, except for our industry. Right, our industry is so far behind with adapting and adopting social media. I think our industry is using it as advertising instead of brand building, and I'm hoping that in 2019 that changes just for the individuals on these calls, because we keep talking about it. Social media is not about, oh, here's my latest listing, right? Social media needs to be about who you are as an individual and what service you're providing, because that's how you're going to get more business. So I hope that is something that all of you are going to be focused on, and I'm going to see a lot more of that in 2019. And if anyone offline wants to send me a note and say, how can I do this better, just send me a note, and I'm happy to chat with you guys. So they talk about how service is number one, and he gives some things to some homework. So he says, assume that your service is bad, and what can you do to improve it, or what can you do to differentiate it? And I thought that's interesting, because with ego and confidence, we always think, well, our service is good. But the question is to do some homework. What if our service was bad? What could we do better or differently? So for tenant rep brokers, how could we improve our service? If we start with the homework of the point, my service is bad. So I liked that. I thought that would be a good exercise. He talks about who do we serve? And, always like in project leasing, we serve the tenants, we serve the market, we serve the owner, we serve our broker. There's many people we serve, and that can be very confusing. And you will probably need to create or perform a different service for the different clients and different customers, right? And that's hard. And he talks about ways to go about that. He says, who is setting your standards? Are your clients setting your standards? Are you setting your standards? Is your industry setting your standards? And then he wrote, is your ego setting your standards? Which I was like, wow, that's very interesting. But who's setting your standards? And are you doing things because the guy, the competitor's doing it like that? And do you have like a gut instinct of, I think I could do this differently and better, and it's different, but no one's ever done it like this before. Try it. You never know, what might impact your business or your industry, right? He says, can you write an ad for your service? Another exercise. Write an ad for your service. He says, and I thought that was pretty cool. Like if you're a tenant rep broker, what would you write in your ad if you wanted to run an ad in the Shopping Centers Today magazine? I run ads in the Shopping Centers Today magazine, and reading this book and talking about what's your skill set or what do people know you for. I just created a new ad that talks about rookies. Do I train non-rookies? Yes. Do I coach non-rookies? Yes, but a lot of people know me for training or coaching rookies. So I just changed my ad, and I'll see, what kind of reaction I get from that. But can you write an ad for your service? And he says, think different, not better. Think different, not better. So I think that's also a great exercise. And then he says, start at zero. Is this a viable service? Is this what the world wants? Start at zero. Take a step back. Don't just assume, 5 other companies do it this way. This is how we're going to do it. So I'm going to stop for a second and see if anyone has thoughts or comments on any of that.
Hey, Beth, it's Greg. Sorry.
Yeah.
So the best part of the book that I got out of it was the whole positioning section. Basically, where it says you create a position statement for yourself. Who are we? What do we do? For whom do we serve? What do I need to meet? What needs do I meet for them? And against whom? And what is different about the differentiators? And then for and for the reasons being for the client experiences. And for me personally, I got that resonated simply because I am been working with entrepreneurs for pretty much the bulk of my real estate career. And I'm working with people that have either no retail experience whatsoever, or have an idea but don't necessarily know how to get it off the ground, and how our properties and how our assets can help them achieve those goals. And so from a social media perspective, I've kind of branded myself as the pop-up expert, and I'm not an expert by any means, but that's the brand, I guess, the quote-unquote branding. And so it's how we position ourselves and how we position our assets and how we position our properties and how we position our management teams. How are we doing that to serve our clients and serve our customers and serve our shoppers, our tenants, and that kind of thing. I think it was it hit home what exactly I'm trying to do and kind of how I'm differentiating myself within the industry and just within the market and the sub-markets that I'm in, so that I'm top of mind when an entrepreneur is looking to open a business, whether they open it a property of mine or not, I don't care, but I want them to talk to me first.
For sure. And I think, those 7 questions that are more later on in the book, I love that because it does kind of, you're able to take a look at that, and what you do is significantly different than probably the rest of the people on the call or the people that are going to listen to the recording. And, and the things that you're going to do, or the skill sets that you're going to need, and the services that you're going to have to provide to an entrepreneur is way different than a 3 unit chain or a national retailer, right?
Yep.
So I agree. I loved that. Now, when you did the questions and did the homework, did you come up with did you answer the question and surprise yourself?
The hardest question was me for the last one was the so question. And so, what experiences are we trying to, what does the client want? What does the retailer want? And that was always the hardest part for me. That's the hardest part for me because, that's part of the discovery phase of trying to, after initial conversations and trying to truly understand what this tenant wants, where do they want to be in 1, 2, 3 years. That one's the hardest one for me. But the rest I was able to kind of at least have an answer that just needs to be carved out.
Well, I think, and I would think that the people need from you hand-holding and education more than anything.
They do, right.
And sometimes they probably need you to tell them that their ideas may not fly.
And I need to know from them just to better understand what their industry is. People come with new ideas all the time, and I go, wait, what is that? And you just have to kind of pull all this stuff out that they're not necessarily know. They just assume we know, and we don't. and we just have to play. They're educating us just as much as I'm educating them.
I can wait for her. Okay, I wasn't sure.
Okay, whoever's talking to someone else, mute your phone, please. So I think, I'm sure the first time all of us got the call that said, I want to open a vape store, we were like, what's that? So one of my favorite parts of the book was, I have two favorite parts of the book. I love the Picasso story. I have told the Picasso story in my career 500 times. And for those of you that didn't read the book or listen to the book, I was very happy, by the way, that there was an audio version. I thought because the book was so old there wouldn't be, but there was, so I was very happy. But the Picasso story goes like this. There's a woman walking down, the Champs-Élysées in France, in Paris, and she passes by a guy, and she looks at him, and she realizes it's Picasso. So she says, Mr. Picasso, could you do me a favor and do a sketch of me? So he says, sure, madame, and he whips out a sketch in like 3 minutes, and he goes to hand it to her, and she goes, how much? And he says, like $10,000 or whatever in francs. And she goes, oh my gosh, $10,000 for 3 minutes. It only took you 3 minutes. And Picasso says, oh, madame, no, that's not correct. It took me my lifetime. And I have told people that sell services that story tons and tons of times, because when you are starting out in a career, now in our industry, there are set fees and set percentages usually, but for my industry, coaching and training, it's kind of all over the board. But sometimes we take for granted or we forget. If you're a tenant rep broker and you have done 400 tenant rep deals with Home Depot and Michaels and Kohl's and Costco and with tons and tons and tons of people, you're bringing that market knowledge and that retail touring expertise and experience to the table, where you can charge more than the guy that's just starting out in the tenant rep world. So I think that or in any service business, you're bringing your lifetime of skills and your experience to the table. So I love that story in the book. And then this go around, which I haven't read the book for 20 years, so this is new. This is recent for me as well. What I liked a lot, which is near the beginning of the book, was where he talks about competition. And he says, in a service industry, when you're not buying a product but you're selling your service, he says, you're competing with your prospect. Your prospect is your competitor. Why is that? Because your prospect can either, 1, do it themselves, or 2, do nothing. And I worked out at my gym this morning with my trainer, and I said to him this story. I said, your competitor, you may compete with the guy down the street who's a trainer, but you're talking to a 58-year-old woman who wants to come in and get trained like I did when I first started 5 years ago. And your competitor is not that I might be talking to the gym down the street or the trainer down the street, and maybe I am, but really the competition he's up against is, and even with retailers looking for space, that mom and pop retailer looking for space, and they're thinking, should I hire the tenant rep broker? Or can they do it themselves, or do they just not do anything at all? And how important is having that knowledge and thinking about that prospect's, those two options for that prospect? How important is that when you're trying to sell your service to them? I think that's really important. And I've never considered that when I'm pitching my training business. Certainly I know intellectually, well, they could do nothing at all, or the director of leasing could train them themselves. But when I'm pitching my service, I'm always thinking, well, they're talking to me and they're talking to this guy. So did anyone read that and think, or if you didn't read the book, does this resonate with anybody on the call? Do I have any tenant rep brokers on the call? I'm curious. No. Okay. So then he talks about execution and how important execution is, and I thought this statement was interesting. He said, it's better and more successful to execute a marginal idea passionately than to execute a brilliant idea marginally. So execution, passionate execution on a marginal idea is better than marginal execution on a brilliant idea. I thought that was very interesting. Anyone have any thoughts on that, on how that applies to your business or your service or skills that you're out pitching?
I think, hey Beth, it's Teresa Grassoff. I think that's just a great reminder. Hi, that just for all of us, right? We can never lose the burning desire to go and rush it, whatever it is, personally, in business, whatever project it is. If you're flat, who wants to come alongside?
Right. And how about that? You know, a lot of us or many people get stuck in my idea is not that good enough, right? Like it's not a brilliant idea, so why should I go execute it passionately, right, or perfectly, or as enthusiastically as possible, right?
Right. That's a great counterpoint, right? Our lack of confidence in that idea.
Absolutely. So if we're sitting there and we have an idea, go with your gut instinct that the idea, maybe it's not going to work. It might not work, but go for it. And maybe it's not even the most brilliant idea, but you just feel that the market is asking for this. Go for it. Try it out. Do it with passion and enthusiasm. And it's better than, and certainly it's better than sitting on the idea. I always laugh when I read a lot about people say, I had that Uber idea. I had that VRBO idea. Execution is 9/10 of the law, right? It's great that you had that idea, but who actually goes and makes it happen and gets it done? Those are the ones that are successful. We didn't do the not the VRBO, but the what's the other Airbnb. That Airbnb book is pretty good. I kind of whipped through that on a long flight once. If you guys want just an interesting read, doesn't really have any. It has some parts to do with real estate, but how those two guys almost failed 10 times before Airbnb took off. Great, it's a great read. So I highly recommend that. They talk about when you're trying to identify your client, to know the client, the people, and making sure you understand it's about people. And he walks through a comparison between Carl and Sharon, two potential clients, and how the two are the furthest apart, and what their needs are and what they're thinking of is completely different. And if we, in our selling our service, are only thinking of the client and being very generic about the client and not taking it a step further and realizing they're people and they have different desires and different interests and different needs, we're making a big mistake. And I think that in a lot of times our work, we do a lot of work over the phone where we rarely meet the people that we're doing business with. And how we should probably personalize that a little more, because I think that he says that you will be more successful when you do that. He also talked about Sam Walton, and he said Sam Walton's motto was go where they ain't. And he said at the time, Kmart and other department stores didn't go to small, like suburban cities, and that Walmart said go where they ain't. there was another quote in the book that said the best strategy in war, I think this came from The Art of War actually, the best strategy in war is to win without a fight, which, I akin this to supply and demand. When I first started buying shopping centers in 2004, 2005, I had just left Terra Nova, and all of the people I knew that were buying shopping centers were these big institutions, and they were buying big, grocery-anchored centers, Publix-anchored centers. And there's no way I could didn't have the money to compete with them, but I didn't want to compete with them. They were, prior clients, et cetera. But I knew I couldn't really compete with them. And I said, what can I do? What can I go buy that will still make me money and I can still improve the real estate? And I started focusing on these smaller strip centers, which has turned out to be great for me. And now I go to these ICSCs and everyone's talking about, how hot small multi-tenant 5-store strips are. So, I was before the time, but I wanted to go where people were not. I wanted to go where there was less competition so that I could actually buy something and not compete with bids of 30 different people trying to buy the same asset. So, best strategy in war is to win without a fight. And so I was thinking in my head, how could this relate to like a tenant rep broker? And again, I don't, maybe there's some on the phone. No one spoke up, but and maybe we can transition this to project leasing as well, especially if you're out and your job is to go find projects, to get third-party listings on. So, what if my son said I want to go do tenant rep brokerage, maybe someone could go be the expert of, franchise tenant rep brokerage, which I would think is very, very difficult. But or maybe you do you're focusing on, I only want to represent medical, or if there's a way to succeed and have enough business, restaurant tenant rep brokerage. So go where there isn't a throngs of other people competing for the same service and the same skill as you. So Sam Walton did it, obviously super successful. And I think, how anyone on the call, and just what Greg was saying earlier, Greg's the only, besides, the fact that I've done, 3 or 4 pop-ups, and I love pop-ups, Greg's been the only other guy that I've seen on social media talking about pop-ups. And now I see some, larger companies have started to see the benefit of working with an entrepreneur, like in an incubator situation, Greg, right? You've seen other larger companies say, hey, let's try this. Let's have a space at every center that we can advertise to and kind of use as an incubator to bring the more unique, right, experiential retailer into our centers. But other than that new wave, I haven't seen that much about pop-ups, right?
No, I mean it's been not. It's slowly but surely getting more publication and publicity, but a lot of landlords aren't talking about it, and they don't. And in some cases, they just can't get out of their own way. They think they're trying to share trade secrets or something like that, and then it's not what it's about. So. We're just trying to provide value for brand new retailers and entrepreneurs, because those people are going to be, the local and small retailers of today are going to be our regional and international retailers of tomorrow. And so
sure.
I want to nurture them now and help them grow, and because their success will refer other successes, and it will just steamroll. I mean, it's a basic sales process, and that's the objective.
Absolutely. Anyone else on the call have any experience with doing pop-ups?
Hey, Beth. This is Mike Corbett out in the West Coast. How are you?
Hi, Mike.
Good to hear all these comments. We do our retail call once every 2 weeks, and pop-ups, I don't know, for the last year and a half have been a big push of ours. I mean, it's, as we all know, we're so busy that you're trying to lease permanent space, and that would still be my preference. But we just bought a big center in Gresham, Oregon, and that's one of our, we're designating a person to go out and to cultivate the pop-ups for all the reasons you guys just mentioned. The incubation of it, the diversity, the local contacts with the neighborhoods and the groups. You feel like you're part of the community, and they can come in and test things out. It's not all just chain stores. So it's a big push for our company, and in my world, I think it's going to be more and more prevalent all the time because of all the things that we know about retailers and how things are going to change, and you're going to have vacancy. So what do you do with that vacancy? So that's just my 2 cents, my observation.
I've been very successful, with I've only done a few in my my small portfolio of 6 centers, but in one center I did 2 pop-ups, one with the University of Miami Hurricanes store, which was clothing and apparel and, tchotchke stuff. I got him out of a warehouse. He started in 750 square feet. He has now expanded to 2,200 square feet. He does more than $1 million in sales in the store and $500,000 online. Huge success. He's 20 miles from the campus. My shopping center is 20 miles from the campus. So huge destination tenant, right? And he does a ton of special events. And, when I brought him in, there wasn't a lot of TI. I gave him the space as is, and I started with $1,000 a month, like during the first football season. And then that was 5 years ago. And we gradually graduated him up to, he's now in a full market rent 5-year deal. So huge success. The other one was Music Academy. My son's piano teacher. I had, overnight during the recession went from 2 vacancies to 15 and said, Miss Vanessa, today is your lucky day. You always wanted to try a storefront. Here's your chance. Take it as is. Just pay the light bill and the insurance, and we'll see how it goes. She also was probably in the center about 4 years. She got up to about 50% of market plus CAM, and then I had to help her find another space in a flex warehouse office space because she needed 5,000 square feet, and my rents were double what she could afford to pay. But she still went from no rent out of, from her house into 750 square foot bay, no rent, to paying me when she left. She was at 25 triple net, but my rents were 50 triple net. So I went and I tenant repped her and found her some space nearby. So and she was bringing about 400 to 500 families to my center a week. So when I'm out canvassing wherever I am around the country, I've had leasing agents where I'm out canvassing. I remember I was in Fort Worth and I walked into a great it was like a educational toys and bookstore, phenomenal. And I'm with 2 leasing agents from the company that I was working with, and and it was in August. It was June, and because back to school was coming. And they're like, no, we're very, very happy. And they were expanding. Like the store was overwhelmed with merchandise. And I said to the owner, she goes, and I know your center. We like it, but we're good with one. And I said, well, would you ever consider doing, like a back to school thing? Do you have the merchandise, obviously? Do you have the personnel? And my client ended up doing like 1,000 square foot back to school store where they just did like an outlet thing, and they ended up staying for Christmas. I'm not sure whatever happened, if they ever turned it into a permanent store. But the leasing agents turned to me when I was like, oh, would you ever consider a pop-up for back to school? And they're like, our boss is never going to let you do that. But, I was able to convince them, convince the owner of the property, why the heck not? You've got the vacancy. You're not going to put any money in it. I think we did a CAM only and $500 a month for the back to school. I don't know what they ended up doing for Christmas. So, look, if you're 98% leased, you don't need to do this. But as Mike just said, with the changes in retail, and look, we've all been in a very healthy economic state. I can't speak for other places of the country, but certainly South Florida. We have had unbelievable good economy. Something's going to have a correction. There will be a correction, whether it's, eventual rising interest rates or student loan debt or whatever it is that's going to cause it. We are going to have some vacancies. So being able to do pop-ups and bring entrepreneurs in who can bring the uniqueness and a destination, a following. I remember I was watching Shark Tank about 3 weeks before I was supposed to go to, was it Savannah? No, Athens. I was supposed to go to Athens, Georgia. There was a mall there, and I was going to do a canvassing 2-day boot camp for this mall in Athens, Georgia. And I'm, timing is everything. I'm watching Shark Tank, and I see that there's a woman that owns a store called Little Black Dress or something like that, and she had a warehouse, like 30,000 square foot warehouse, where in Athens, Georgia. And they were doing online selling of little, of outfits for women, and their sales were like $8 million. And I was calling my client going, we have to go find this warehouse when I'm in Athens. We need to let them do a pop-up in the mall or let them just do like a weekend thing, because now they're on Shark Tank. They're going to get all this press. This would be a great destination, idea. So I think we can all get these ideas to improve our service, to whether it's, our ownership, our project, our broker, our tenant rep brokers, all of the services that we're providing. We can come up with creative ideas. Other comments before I move on? So they talk, yes? No, okay. He talks about having your clients hiring a company to do oral surveys about your service. So I do know that there's a company that is a client of mine, Regency Properties in Indiana, not the Regency from Jacksonville. And they have oral surveys done to their tenants. They own, a ton of shopping centers, I'm going to say maybe 100, and they have this company that does oral surveys to their tenants, and they always win awards for being great landlords. I have to tell you, I'm a pretty confident person, but I'm a little insecure. But we should get out of our insecurity and have, someone. He says that oral surveys are better because in print and what people write can, get skewed one way or another. And a person doing a survey over the phone can hear in like an intonation of a voice or whatever. So I don't know. I don't know if I have the confidence to do that. I think I give a pretty good service to my clients for my training, but it does hurt your ego if you hear some bad stuff. But that does give you the opportunity, obviously, to improve. So has anyone on the phone ever done any kind of surveys on your service and want to share? So does anyone think that we should do that? Anyone on the phone think this might be a good idea?
I do. I think it's a great idea.
Is it scary?
I don't know. I guess we'll find out how good or bad it could be. It's a little scary, but it's coming, and it's something that's going to hold you accountable for. You're inevitably going to improve your level of service.
100%. We did an event called the South Florida Independent Retailers Awards event in September, and we sent out surveys, and we got some really, really, really great ideas. Really great ideas that we're going to involve in our second annual. So I do think you can get great information, but you guys know me. I'm pretty authentic. It's scary. It's scary, even for confident people. So he talks about in the book, what are your clients really buying, and really understanding what are they really buying. Because what you think they're buying and what they're really buying does not always match up. I just changed accountants. I've had the same accountant for 20 or so years, and I just didn't feel like my accountant was creative enough. He never called and asked me any questions. I would say, hey, I read this. What do you think about this? So I asked around, and some friends of mine, had this one woman that they really liked, and they thought she was good. So I've moved my business, and one of my properties over to her. And Josie and I have had 2 or 3 phone calls with this woman, and we're just wowed at the ideas that she's coming up with and the information she's giving us. So in that case, you buy an accountant services. For sure you want to make sure you're following IRS rules and safety and security. But there is a fine line between safety and security and conservatism, whatever that word, conservatism versus creativity and knowledge of the laws. So in that case, I was kind of tired with safety and security and was curious about creativity and how the new tax laws could benefit me. So understanding, who is your client and what are their needs. Like Greg said, an entrepreneur who's thinking about, starting a pop-up, his needs are going to be completely different than the 3-store chain that some of us might be negotiating with. So, social media. So there's a whole section in the book that talks about being familiar. And they say that, believe it or not, even if you have bad press, so let's say someone writes something negative about you, a year or 2 later, when they question or they survey, do you know ABC service or DEF service? If the name was familiar, they don't remember the bad stuff that you wrote about. They just remember the name. And the familiarity breeds, it's kind of like elections, right? How many people do you say they check the box in the ballot because they saw the name, whether it was through advertisements or through signs in the roadway? They just check a name that's familiar to them. So, but the question is, that's why social media is so important for our industry, because if you are the name that retailers see or entrepreneurs see, they see your name, your company, your signs. There's another part in the book that they talk about. How did they word this? Hold on. I thought I wrote it down. Basically, they said, it says don't squander a point of contact from your calls to the way your receptionist answers your calls. How many rings? Does it go to voicemail? Is it a service? Is it your voice? Is it enthusiastic on the voicemail? What do your business cards look like? How are your emails written? Is there anything at the bottom of your emails? What do your invoices look like? Don't squander a point of contact. And don't underestimate the familiarity of your name and the ease of your name and the association of your name. I was in Washington, D.C. Those of you that know me, when I go canvassing, I say to you, the prospect doesn't care, who Beth Azor is or Azor Advisory Services. They just care that you're interrupting them, and I always preach, get to the point right away. Except for one time in my entire career when I was in Washington, D.C., and we were canvassing for Rappaport. Rappaport has such an unbelievable reputation in the Washington, D.C. market that I would say 10 stores in on our trip to visit 100 stores that day, 10 stores in, I said, you know what? I'm changing my mind. I'm changing my process today for you guys, because when we would walk in and say, hey, we're from the Rappaport company and we have shopping centers, what are your expansion plans? Everyone knew and thought so well of the Rappaport company. So that's only happened to me once in my career. So, because they were so big, so they were the monopoly in the area. So, but he talks about familiarity and getting your word out, and that's how we can do that much easier. Aaron, I know you're on the phone. Do you want to share a little bit about what we talked about yesterday on your LinkedIn post and how many people read that post and what happened from that?
Sure. I'll do it in real time as I'm sitting at a traffic light, so don't drive and text. But yeah, I posted my transition from leaving Peb last week to going out on my own, and was fortunate enough to get a lot of engagement on there. And I'm actually looking right now, it's got about 30,000 views, so pretty exciting for me as I start my business and try to build a brand within our sector. And because you were kind enough to like and comment on there, someone who you have a nice relationship reached out and asked if I was looking for funding for any of my deals, which I'm obviously open to having conversations whenever and however. And as a matter of fact, I am looking for investors for income-producing properties whenever those do come up and make sense for what I'm trying to accomplish. And that led to a pretty quick follow-up with your relationship, who, in turn, he and I just talked, and we're meeting this weekend. And for whatever it's worth, I think I would have a very tough time spending his money if I tried. So obviously forever grateful for you on that, and that certainly wouldn't have happened if A, I didn't post on LinkedIn, and B, you didn't engage on there by commenting or liking or both or whatever you did. So thank you for that, and it's very real that if you put yourself out there, people will react, and it hasn't just been the gazillionaires, you call them, that I'm speaking to. It's been retailers that I've never done deals with that are reaching out and saying, wow, it's so encouraging you're taking a leap of faith. Like, let me know what projects you're working on, and maybe we're growing there. And these are retailers I don't even know these people's names. It was awesome. It's been really cool.
Well, right, and I think, look, I will say this for, in response to your post. So you didn't do the obligatory, hey, I'm leaving Peb, I'm not going out on my own, right? You went on and on. Right? You said, I know you guys might think it's risky, and, you were authentic and original, and, it might be scary, and I hope I'm not making a mistake, but I've been wanting to do this, forever. And so that's the thing that got people's attention. And that's what I talked about at the beginning of this call. Social media is not to advertise. You got to have some. It's like doing business with people. So I would have never thought to call my friend and say, hey, my other friend Aaron is going out on his own, is going to look for money. I never would have thought to call him. He texted me and said, hey, I just saw this post from this kid. You commented. You obviously know the kid. Should I give him money? But I don't think if you would have done your obligatory, hey, thanks, Pep, for all these years. Everyone, this is my new address. But you added so much color. And any of you that haven't done social media or are dabbling with social media, look Aaron Zucker up and see his post, because you went on and showed your true personality, right? You showed that you were a person and that you had some fears. And I think that's what resonated with the 30,000 people that viewed it, really.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
we all, and I think that, when I post my videos, like 3 people, I've had a holiday party every night this week. It's just the time of the year, which is, we're blessed. I'm blessed to be invited, but a bunch of people I really like you walking the dog videos. So, and I remember one person said, I remember the one that you couldn't turn off the video. I'm like, yes, user error. The dog was pulling me. My phone wasn't, But I think people really like hearing from people and seeing that they're real people. And it's not, this social media I don't think should be used as a platform to advertise. Or maybe it's content, and then advertising. And, the Gary Vaynerchuk, jab, 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 right hook. 12:19. So he also talks about intelligent people killing ideas. If you're very, very intelligent, those are the people that kill creative ideas. So I encourage all of you, if you are around brilliant people and you have a good instinct and you have a good idea, and someone smarter than you, kind of squashes the idea. Think about this statement. I thought that was interesting. You know, if there's limited downside, frickin' go for it, is what I think. Texting. So Grant Cardone, who's a guy that I follow, I think I've posted this a few times, but you know, he talks about in this book, he talks about the recency effect. Recent, like who was the last person you talked to, or if you're going to give a pitch, you want to be the last person to do the pitch, because supposedly there's a recency effect. I'm liking that too, and I had a debate. For those of you on the call that know Paco Diaz, I was at this party the other night, and he and I were arguing over this. You know, never use text. It's so unprofessional. And Grant Cardone, who's, by the way, another gazillionaire, says, you know, in the U.S. we have such a problem with follow-up. You know, no one follows up. And retailers tell me that about lease engagement, which, of course, I didn't believe until it happened to me myself. So what he says is what Grant says, and what Paco said, forget it, don't do it, but we're doing it, Karen and I are doing this, is if you get a call in on a property and you're on the phone and, you know, half of us are driving, right, we're talking, the space is 1,200 square feet, it's $30 a square foot, the cam is blank, whatever. And the guy goes, okay, I'll drive by and see it. You know, what Karen and I have been doing is pulling over on the side of the road, hint, hint, quote, haha, and then texting the guy right back, because the guy's calling from his mobile. And, like, you can say to the guy or the girl, is this your mobile number? I'll text you the information so you have it, right? So you pull over to be safe, and then you text back the guy, hey, Bill, just hung up with you. Just to confirm, the rent is $30 plus cam. The space is 1,200 square feet. I'm going to be and then this is the pitch. I'm going to be at the property tomorrow at 3 o'clock if you want to come by and see it. Since Karen and I started doing this in the last 45 days, it's improved our showings by about 30%. And I would have told you 45 days ago, never text. That how unprofessional. Well, I believe that Cardone is right. And the intimacy of the text, the fact that you're following up immediately after the call-in, it's been working for us. So, you know, Paco says, I'll never do it. It's so unprofessional. And he's, you know, one of our Rockstar brokers down here. I respect that. He also said, I'm 72 years old and I'm not going to change. So I'm 58. I'm still going to try to change. So it's working for us. I encourage some of you to try it and let me know what you think, if it's working for you. I'm going to, okay, 12:22. I have 3 more minutes. I love this. Leverage the position you have. He talks about Avis and Hertz. So Hertz was number 1. Avis was number 2. He said instead of trying to beat the competition, who's kind of like got it, you know, cemented in that they're number 1, Avis created a program that said, hey, we're number 2, but we're trying harder. And that the year that they came out with that branding campaign, they blew the socks off of the revenues of Hertz. When I was young at Terra Nova and we were doing tenant rep, the big kahuna in our industry back then, and there weren't a lot of bigger firms, was the shopping center group. My friend Ann Featherston was there and did, you know, the big boys. Well, we leveraged that relationship. We were very close, and we said, look, anytime you guys get a call that if you're representing Home Depot and you get a call for Lowe's, send them to us. Leverage the position you had. We were the backup. We ended up getting Lowe's. They were doing Toys R Us, so we got Baby Superstore. We ended up getting, you know, we would get the competition of the people that they couldn't do. So we leveraged the position we had. We weren't going to go compete head-to-head against them. They were way bigger. They had been doing it a lot longer. So we said, give us your throwaways. And we were able to build a business around that. So think about that. And then the last thing in the book that I loved was the whole idea of American Express versus MasterCard. So he says, you know, MasterCard's accepted in way more places than American Express. MasterCard, you can pay when you want. You don't have to pay it all at once. And MasterCard charges $20 and American Express charges $55. However, 25 million people have American Express cards because of the branding. Membership has its privileges, and it's thought of as more, whatever the word is, higher end or whatever. Prestigious. Thank you so much. So these kind of stories, what I love about reading is these kind of stories, if you take 10 minutes when you're driving in the car to turn off the music and not look at your phone and think about that. Think about person A. Think about American Express and MasterCard. And does that, or how does that relate in your business? Because these are stories that we all can learn from. And maybe it's some crazy, silly idea that leads to another crazy, silly idea that leads to a brainstorming idea. But we have to read, and then we have to take what we read and kind of just sit on an idea and listen to it and see if it does anything and adds to, what we do for a business. I've enjoyed the year. I hope you guys have enjoyed the year. We have the book for January is a book that, do I have it here? My friend from Brixmore gave it to me, Brian Finnegan. He gave it to me at the New York ICSE last week. The book is called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. I've started reading it. I like it. And it talks about obstacles, which we all have, objections in our business. So I am going to ask Josie to send out a Survey Monkey just about the book club. What do you like? What do you don't like? Give us some recommendations. I'm curious as to what was the best book of the year versus what was the worst book of the year. And, I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday. Thank you so much for participating. I think we had a great time, and I look forward to next year. And buy my book. Merry Christmas,
Thank you, Beth.
Happy holidays, Happy New Year.